We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
All right, hey, welcome back to Seattle Real Estate Radio. This is Dan Keller with New American Funding, and I'm here with my co-host, Christian Nossum.
Yes.
Of the Awesome Nossum Group. And we've got a great guest today. We are kind of continuing our journey along the trail of new construction and building and buying new construction. So we have an awesome guest today. I'm going to let Christian introduce him because you know a lot more about this young man.
Yes, I do. I got to play around with his website. That's why I know a lot more.
You showed it to me before, and I was quite impressed. You showed it to me right before the show, and I was like, holy cow.
I know.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So today on the show, we have Ethan Phelps-Goodman of Seattle in Progress. And like I said before, if you're a longtime listener, probably about 6 months ago, we brought up Seattle in Progress as a great resource for buyers to potentially find new construction coming up on the market, like a townhouse that maybe is in the neighborhood of their choice, and you can snag it as a pre-sale potentially. Or if you're buying a place and you see one of the land use action forms or signs in the in the front yard, and you're going, well, what the heck is going on there? You could easily look it up quickly on Seattle in Progress. So Ethan is a software developer, civic organizer, and real estate tech geek, kind of like Dan and I, except he's a little more geeky because he actually has a website that he runs himself.
Yeah, that he made.
That he made. We just pay people.
Yeah.
He runs Seattle in Progress, a web app for tracking current and proposed construction in Seattle. Seattle in Progress offers free tools for Seattle residents to see what's being built in their neighborhoods and sophisticated tools for real estate professionals who need complete information on the new construction pipeline. So thank you very much for coming in today, Ethan. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. So first, why don't you just kind of describe your app, Seattle in Progress, and explain kind of the benefits of it?
Sure. So at its most basic level, it's just a map with a bunch of pins on it.
Yes.
So you can pull it up on your phone, pull it up on your desktop, and wherever you're standing at the moment, if you're at home or if you're out on the street somewhere downtown Seattle, you can see everything that's either under construction around you or going through permitting.
Yeah.
Click on a pin, and you'll see, depending on how far along in the process it is, maybe a nice rendering from the architects of what that building is going to look like.
Cool. So I know when we pulled it up right before the show, we were sitting at Starbucks next door, or Tully's, or whatever coffee shop it was there, and Dan pulls it up on his laptop, and it automatically found where we were and showed us exactly what was going on right around us, which is super cool because that means if you're on a walk with your dog or something, and you're like, what the heck is this? You can open up Seattle in Progress. It'll automatically find where you're at, tell you based on the map, here you go. This is what's going on.
Yep, and it, the idea kind of came just from me doing exactly that, from walking around and being like, there's a big pit here. What is this?
What is going on?
I could run into 5 construction sites going 5 blocks from Capitol Hill to downtown.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the notice of proposed land use signs. People have probably seen those, the big black and white boards that
usually have graffiti all over them.
They have graffiti over them, but it doesn't matter because they told you nothing to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyways.
Even if it didn't, it doesn't. It says proposed building of 142,000 square feet with 4 parking spots.
Yep. And you're left to scratch your head and have no further way to do anything with that. So,
exactly.
So this was very directly a response to that, saying, man, in this day and age, we can do better than that.
Especially in Seattle.
Especially in Seattle. Well, and one thing a little bit unique to Seattle is we have this design review process, which doesn't exist in every city. So that's a very formal public process. Every big project has at least 2 public meetings. The architects have to present renderings to the city and to the public. And that process has existed for 20 years, but it just hasn't been very accessible. I think very few people have even known it existed really outside of the building industry.
Yeah, exactly. Neighbors or neighborhood residents, I guess, they don't necessarily know what they can do, what they're, they can say to each other, hey, I'm really mad that this huge building's going in our neighborhood. And then that's about where it ends.
Yeah. And we talked about finding out what's being built, but the next obvious step is because of that design review public process, you have a chance to give input. You can go to these meetings, you can say what your concerns are about the buildings. And usually the outcome is, somewhere in the middle between what the developers originally wanted and what the neighbors hoped to change. But there, compromises are regularly arrived at.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is know that the meeting is happening and show up.
And show up and talk.
Yep.
It's not that hard.
And so with Seattle in Progress, it is much, much easier to find out about that.
Exactly. Because, again, prior to Seattle in Progress, you basically had to do all this legwork on your own. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times most people don't know where to start.
No.
Because unless you're in the industry, why would you know where to start?
Yeah.
And then again, other people in the industry, other agents, real estate agents like myself, a lot of them don't even know where to start.
Yeah, the city tools
sad,
are very
but...
complex, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I guess what's the importance of your role with Seattle in Progress?
Mm-hmm. So I came at it really just from sort of a civic angle of wanting people to know what's being built. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to be surprised by development. Every building has a year or two of planning behind it. You shouldn't be shocked when something goes up.
Yeah.
So getting people just to see what's being built in their neighborhoods is one. You talked about people looking to buy new construction. That's certainly a use for it, getting in on pre-sales. Mm-hmm. But also people looking to buy a home just anywhere in Seattle. There could already be permits in process on the neighboring lot, and there won't necessarily be any signs out front for months and months.
Yeah.
And if you're going to purchase a home, you should know if there's new construction already permitted for a neighboring lot.
Yes, you should.
And not everybody does, unfortunately.
Most people don't, unfortunately. Yes. Yeah, and so when we were doing a demo, you were kind of showing me on the computer, and I was on the phone with you going over it, and I was sharing screens with you. And, I mean, it's pretty amazing how in-depth you can get on some of this info. Mm-hmm. I was kind of doing a demo yesterday with actually the owner of Wilson Realty, the company that I work at. Mm-hmm. He developed some stuff as well, and he was like, hey, yeah, that's pretty cool. Why don't you go over to this street and see what's going on? I'm like, okay. So I go there on the map, and I'm like, he's like, I don't know if it's that one or what. And I just clicked on one. I was like, there's your name. You're the one building this. Yep. Oh, and here's your architect.
Yep.
Here's your landscaper. Mm-hmm. Here's your, I don't remember what the other one that was on there was, but.
Contractor, if it's far enough along.
Contractor, yeah. I mean, it listed all their info. Mm-hmm. It had basically the artist's rendering of what the building was going to look like, what the floor plans were, the blueprints, had all these different things that he was just completely blown away that all this was available.
Well, it's always been public. It's just never been particularly easy to find.
It's been extremely hard to find. Mm-hmm. So SeattleInProgress.com makes it super simple. There's a free version, which gives you most of what everyday user is going to want to know. There's additional paid versions, pro accounts, where if you're in the industry or I don't know, who are the people that generally use the pro account?
So there's kind of a wide range of people who sign up for the paid version. Mm-hmm. Probably the biggest single segment is people like vendors and suppliers and subcontractors and all the people who need to sell to the general contractors. Because for them it's a lead gen tool. It's saying, what projects are coming that I can bid on. So that's very important to them, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then there's a number of people, brokers in the commercial space, real estate investors, who are looking for kind of general area knowledge and general market knowledge. And then there's the residential agents. And again, they're looking more for just having a handle of what's going on in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. If they're out with a client and the client says, what is that over there that's got a bulldozer in it? They want to be able to tell them off the top of their head what that is and who's doing it. And they want to know who's building. So what are the builders in this particular neighborhood? What's the time frame for new construction? That sort of thing.
Yep. Well, I know for me, as a residential agent myself, I can't know, and no one can know everything about every block in the entire city. Mm-hmm. I know a lot, but I don't know everything.
There's a lot going on.
I freely admit that I don't know everything, but I know the tools that can get me the answers, and that's where you can add to your value as an agent, and that's where I could see down the road agents potentially having their own pro account where they can definitely know more than even their buyers know because they can get that in-depth look and know a little bit more, which, again, as a professional and as a real estate broker myself, you need to, you should be ahead of your buyers.
Yep, absolutely.
And you should know more than them at all times. And when you don't, you're kind of showing that you're not maybe where you should be. Yep. So who are generally your customers and how do they use the tool differently? So I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but who's the general user base?
Yeah, and the vast majority of users are using the free version, which is as it should be.
Yeah.
And, that's built to kind of answer all the questions a non-professional is likely to have, which really centers on show me a picture.
Yeah.
That's really the start and end of it for the most part is I see something's going to be built here. What's it going to look like? And so everything in the free version really starts and ends there. Is show me some renderings of what this project's going to look like. And then for the pro version, for the audiences I mentioned, kind of the vendors and suppliers, commercial side of the industry, residential side of the industry, the way they're using the tool or what they get out of the pro version that's not in the free version is a lot better tools for kind of finding the specific types of projects they're interested in.
A lot more filters.
A lot more filters, a lot more querying. So if you want to get in on mid-rise construction before the general contractor has come along, you can look for just mid-rise stuff that is just starting to go through permitting. Or if you want to get in on townhomes that are nearing completion because you want to do landscaping or roof decks or something, you can look at townhomes that got their permits within the last 6 months, that sort of thing. Or, look for hotel projects in particular. Most any criteria you could want to search by.
Interesting.
And then also in the pro version, I should say, the other kind of advantage over the free version is the amount of information you get on any particular project.
Yeah, exactly. You can go much more in depth.
Much more in depth. So the free version is not going to give you, the phone number of the architect.
Yeah.
But you may find that in the pro version if that's part of the public documents.
Exactly. Which, again, you can dig in a lot and really far. So we got about a minute before we got to take a break. Could you tell me real quick, what's kind of current construction like versus older construction in the past or new construction in the past? How do you see?
Oh, I wish there was a lot more than a minute for that question.
We can go into it next segment too, but...
in terms of kind of general volume of construction, I think the interesting thing to me is the sort of time frame of your perspective is what matters. If you only have a 5-year view of the past, it looks like we're just booming beyond all belief.
Yeah.
But if you have even a 10-year view of the past, we're kind of right at where we were in 2009. So we're at a peak of a boom, but it's no bigger than the boom that came right before it. If you have a 30-year view of the past, we didn't build much of anything from like 1960 to like 1990.
Wow.
So if you put your image of Seattle came to your head in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, you're used to like not much happening. And so this just looks out of control.
That's crazy.
But if your perspective's even further back, this is a slow decade actually compared to the 1850s to the 1960s. We built way more back then.
Well, that makes sense. All right, so we're going to come back with Ethan right after the break. We got a whole lot more questions to go into, so stay tuned for more Seattle Real Estate Radio.
Stay tuned. There's more Seattle Real Estate Radio coming up here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
Hello, and welcome back to Seattle Real Estate Radio here on KKOL 1300 AM. We are back with more from the one and only Ethan Phelps-Goodman of Seattle in Progress, seattleininprogress.com. You also have an app, I believe.
Just a website that works well on phones.
Okay.
Not in the app store
So I know
yet.
because I've used it on my phone. I'm like, I said it and then I was like, wait a second. Is there an app?
No, go to
'Cause
Safari
I know
or
I've
go to
used
Chrome.
it. Yeah, I've used it and it works just the same. So, okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, no, Ethan's a phenomenal resource. So I've got a couple questions now. I know you beat him up last segment. I'm just curious, and I'm sure our listeners are too. How did you kind of get into land use and permitting?
So my background is in software development. I'm a tech person by trade. Everything about real estate I'm learning in the last 2 years. But I got into it kind of coming more from the housing policy side and thinking about development as sort of, what's the overall direction our city's going. And that came really from growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I know people think of Seattle as being in somewhat of a crisis and having expensive housing, but for anybody who's been to the Bay Area, it is nothing here. Their prices are twice what ours are. Way, way more of a crisis down there.
We just talked about that in the very first segment where we were saying, the median price to buy a home or median income you needed to buy a home in Pittsburgh is like $32,000, and you can buy the average house. In the Bay Area, it's $180,000.
Yep.
to buy the average house. And it's like, it's insane.
Yeah,
and we're somewhere in between there, which is great.
And we can kind of look to San Francisco and say, okay, they didn't do it right.
Yep.
You know, something went really wrong there.
Yep.
Yeah.
What can we do to not follow their model?
Well, so is that kind of what encouraged you to kind of get more involved with organizing and being an advocate in regards to the Seattle housing issues?
Yep. So I was thinking about housing policy. That kind of led me to just the more particular question of what are the individual buildings that are being built, and that led to Seattle in Progress. But Seattle in Progress is kind of a unique business in that the business side is only part of what I do, and the other part of my time is spent on sort of housing activism and organizing around getting better policies for the city in general.
Well, speaking of policies, let's just jump right in there and get your opinion. Are you in favor of ST3, and how does light rail affect land use and housing development?
ST3 is also known as Prop 1. So on the ballot, that's what it's going to be called. Don't look for ST3 because you're going to be like, I don't see it. What is it?
Yeah.
It's Proposition 1.
Prop 1.
Get that out there.
Yep. Prop 1, the light rail
Yes.
initiative. Yeah. I'm for it. Absolutely for it. You know, we had a chance back in the 60s and 70s to build out a regional mass transit system, and the voters of Puget Sound decided not to do it. And we are suffering still today for that.
Regret it every day
regrettable
sitting
decision.
on I-5 or 405.
Indeed. If you want to know who to blame for sitting in traffic today,
Blame yourself.
look to the people who were voting a generation ago.
Yeah.
Mom and dad, grandma, grandpa.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't blame
Thanks,
me. Don't blame
guys.
me. Hey, it's not me.
Just going to work.
So yeah, I really, really hope we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
And as far as property values go with ST3 and where it's going to expand, I mean, I've personally gained or made money off of buying a house, actually two places, on North Beacon Hill. I knew it was coming in. I knew where they were going to build it. And I bought land or a house, a duplex, right near it before anyone else was really paying attention to it. And it was a great decision. And
Absolutely.
I've been advising clients to do the same type of thing moving forward. Now more people see the benefit of light rail, and they're finally getting it, which I've been preaching for 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah.
But they're finally seeing it because they actually use the light rail now that it's gone to UW.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah, that thing's amazing. I'm like, yeah, no duh. I've been telling you that for 10 years.
We'll go to any other city that already has a mass transit system and look at real estate listings, and like sentence number 2 is how many minutes walk to the nearest metro. I mean, that matters so much once you have a mass transit system.
So about 8 years ago, my office had a Sound Transit representative come to our office to give a presentation about the light rail so that we would all learn about it. And we were the first office that had, a real estate company that had ever asked them to present. And they had a study that basically said if you're within a quarter-mile radius of a light rail station, your property value goes up about 25% higher than outlying areas. And then it decreases the amount that it goes up, like ripple effects farther away from that.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so
absolutely.
true. And so moving into the future, I'm going to ask, I'm stealing your question.
Yeah.
Do you have predictions as far as the housing market or zoning goes and what we're expected to see? What's your take being on that side of the coin? Because we're on a different side of the coin, both of us.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners are interested. These are people that have purchased with
smart
you
people,
and
exactly.
us, and whether they're investors or other real estate professionals. So that's a big question.
Right. Well, you say predictions, and that's a dangerous game because by far the biggest driver in where housing prices will go is the global economy and maybe Amazon itself.
Yeah.
And who can predict that?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You'll make a lot of money if you can predict that well.
Yeah, if we all had a crystal ball, we'd all be rich.
But, assuming there's not another big recession and assuming Amazon continues to at least stay stable, prices can only go up. The question is how quickly they'll go up. And, I would like to see them, from the perspective I'm coming at it from, I would like to see them not increase too quickly. Yeah. Obviously, people looking to someday sell their homes are perfectly happy if prices double in the next 5 or 10 years. But I think that would be a bad thing for the city overall. So I hope we can keep price growth to a more reasonable rate.
So how, from the development standpoint, how do you see that happening? Or how can we help that to not double?
Well, that ties in a lot to ST3, assuming that goes forward and we get real mass transit. Once that's happening, you really want to put new housing where people can walk to transit.
Exactly.
It's a $50 billion investment, the way to capitalize on that investment and make it worthwhile is to make sure we're building as much housing as we possibly can right near those stations, because those are the people that are going to get up in the morning
And use
walk to this train station and go into work and not clog up I-5 or 405.
And that's where you can live on 185th and I-5 and Shoreline and buy a house for 500, 400, 500, 600,000. That's a really nice house. And you're 20 minutes away to work or half an hour away to downtown, whatever it is. You don't have to be in Eastlake or Capitol Hill or Wallingford or whatever in order to get there, or Ballard, for instance. You don't have to be in Ballard in order to get to work in that little amount of time.
And there's a real sort of equity component to this too, in that lower income people right now have to go further out from the city in order to find housing. But then if you have to get back into the city for work, that's a huge problem right now with our traffic the way it is. But once we have light rail, if you have to go a few stops out from the city center to find more affordable housing, that's not such a big deal if we have a good transit system.
Totally doable. It's not that big a deal. And, generally it is lower income people that are the ones that have to travel further because they can't afford to live in the heart of the city. It's just not possible. You can't afford it. So I see that long term helping out quite a bit. Dan?
Yeah, so somebody that's looking into this data all the time, what are, I guess, in Seattle, what are some of the housing issues that we're dealing with, or that you, in your opinion, think that we have compared to other cities?
So I think the policy questions that we struggle with as a city all the time is sort of where to add housing. We have a huge housing shortage. That's why prices are going up. That's why people are being displaced. So we need more housing, but where? There's no open land, obviously. So every choice to build housing somewhere is a choice to get rid of what was there before. So do you allow more townhouses to replace single-family homes? Do you allow more mid-rise construction to replace the kind of neighborhood commercial? Do you allow more high-rises downtown? And there are advantages and disadvantages to each, and there are constituencies pushing for or against every sort of housing.
Do you see changes, though, on the horizon for, like you mentioned, townhomes? Yeah,
so the city's put forward a number of proposals, which I think are on the whole a very good direction. And it's sort of a putting everything on the table solution. It's saying let's make incremental changes kind of across the board. So let's make our high-rise towers a little bit taller. Let's let our neighborhood commercial, the sort of Ballard and Capitol Hill commercial districts go up to 8 stories instead of 6 stories. Let's let the single-family zones put in a backyard cottage. Let's expand just a little bit the townhouse area.
I think that alone would add a ton, and I know there's a lot of proponents of that, just the cottage in the backyard. That could be huge. Now, then you got the Airbnb people that are saying, no, we can't allow Airbnb or all that legislation going on too. So it can go either way. Yeah, you can add more density, but are you going to add it to people that are actually living there?
Yep,
or
that's
is
a
it gonna
question.
be transient people that are in and out and just coming to visit. Yeah. So there's so much, and it's such an in-depth conversation, and I think Seattle in Progress does a really good job of helping educate people on the process and what's going on. This isn't a question that we've talked about, but what's another good resource that people could use to really learn and educate themselves on the housing issues in general? What are your favorites?
Well, so going forward, I hope to be doing more of that myself. So Seattle in Progress has kind of concentrated on individual projects up till now, but I do want to bring in more of a sort of neighborhood analysis component and a forward-looking, what would a neighborhood look like under some different policy proposals. But the city's actually putting a lot of resources into explaining their plan, and I think that's at seattle.gov/HALA, which is the name of their plan. That's HALA.
Holla!
Yep. It is the Housing Affordability and Livability Agenda.
That is ridiculous that's their name.
That is their name. But they do have a real wealth of resources there if you want to learn more about
Seattle.gov /HOLA.
HALA.
HALA. See, it's not holla, but that's with 2 L's anyway. So, yes, it is holla, but it's not holla.
Well, and then from what I'm hearing is stay tuned. I mean, continue to check in with SeattleInProgress.com because it sounds like you're on the grow and you're expanding what you're doing online.
Yep, and I've got a blog there. You can find a link to the blog,
Yeah.
and I try and cover some of the issues kind of as they come up, as the ones that are sort of most relevant in terms of what city council is looking at doing.
Okay.
And I try and bring a kind of data-driven perspective to that, really show you the numbers behind the debates.
Yeah, and I know that you're very active on social media as well. So find Seattle in Progress on Facebook, Twitter. I don't know if you're Instagram. I don't know.
Not on Instagram.
I don't know if
Not
that makes
that cool.
sense. You're not on Snapchat.
Not
you're
on
not
Snapchat.
adding weird effects to.
Snap in this neighborhood.
All right, so Seattle in Progress offers a complete view of the new construction pipeline. See who's building what, when, and where. Go to SeattleInProgress.com and click on the Upgrade to Pro link for more information. Mention Seattle Real Estate Radio for a discounted subscription price. Boom. We're just trying to save you money, guys.
That's it. Great job, Ethan. It was great having you.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
so much for having me.
That was a
Great
lot.
info.
And for
Yeah.
anyone that's interested in staying on top of the local Seattle housing issues, definitely follow Seattle in Progress. Stay tuned. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. There's more Seattle Real Estate Radio coming up here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.